I've been in the business for 40 years, sold my dealerships and wanted to start over. I still had the passion to be in the business. And I said to myself, if there was one thing that I could fix above all, that would be the customer experience. And make sure that we focus on the customer and always taking care of that customer.
Hey, what's up? Keep the changers. I am in my element today. I am hanging out with a gentleman that I've known for 25 years, who I consider a good friend. He's someone I admire so much. And I think you're going to really like what we have to share today. And I will tell you that if you don't have a pen and a paper, you might want to get one right now. If you're driving, you might want to stop and listen to this because there's so many nuggets here if you're running a dealership. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you my good friend, Jack Schneider. Jack, and this is really cool because we're live today in Jack's office. So, Jack, thank you so much for being next to me and for doing this. Appreciate you.
Happy to be here.
Yes, thank you. So, Jack, tell us about you. You have one of the top independent pre-owned dealerships in the country. You've been that way for and had that distinction for a long time. Tell us about your story, how you got to this place, and then we'll talk more about Certified Benz and Beamer.
Okay, good question. I've been in the business for 40 years and sold my dealerships and wanted to start over. I still had the passion to be in the business. And I said to myself, if there was one thing that I could fix above all, that would be the customer experience. And make sure that we focus on the customer and always taking care of that customer. And we just never have a customer mad at us. Yeah. And we make our mistakes, but you know what? We take care of it. And that's part of just excellent customer service.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when you mentioned those dealerships, you had dealerships in Southern California. That's where you're originally from. Correct. Tell us a little bit about that journey, going through that, what you maybe learned from that journey and you said, I knew when I wanted to when I got my own store, another store, that I was going to do it differently. Tell us a little bit about that journey in the past and what it taught you in terms of being a car person way back in those days, if you will.
Yeah, so, well, we started with one dealership and we ended up with 8. Mm-hmm. And we ended up with 250 employees. And we sold about 450 a month between them all. And it was a lot of work. And somehow I had an opportunity to sell, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to retire and not do this anymore. And so I sold, and then I still had the passion. Mm-hmm. And so I said I was going to open back up again, but on a smaller level. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. And I said, if there's one thing I'm always striving to do is take care of the customer. Mm-hmm. And I didn't always achieve that all the time because it was a big organization and a lot of people working for us. And I said, I'm just going to focus on the customer in this go around. And we did. And we ended up starting a company that has a lot of repeat and referral business. And I have customers raving about us. Yeah. And it makes me feel good. It's a big part of my gratification for being in the business.
Yeah. And you do come from a place of character. It's absolutely true. And you walk in that.
Right.
And it's so obvious. I have an opportunity, obviously, to go to a lot of different stores. And you've always been, to me, such an elite leader and business operator. I think we met each other when I was doing training at Cardinelli.
Yes.
And you had left those stores. I didn't know your past history in LA.
Right.
But you were a used car manager at Cardinelli,
right,
if I remember.
Right.
And we became friends. Yeah. And then you did this adventure. So tell us about this. How did this come about? Obviously, it was in your vision. You were still passionate. You weren't going to, because of your past, you weren't going to stay just being a used car manager. You wanted to grow and go to another level with another place. Tell us how this started, how this building started, how this business started. Give us a little history of Certified Benz and Beamer, please.
Yeah, so after I sold, I still had the passion for the business. And one of my employees, former employees, had the opportunity to open a Mazda store here locally. And he asked me if I would come and help him get the business off the ground and get it running. And I looked at that and I'm going, I have the passion. Why not? Yeah. And so I came over and worked with him for a couple of years, helping him get the store off the ground. But I realized I wanted my entrepreneurial spirit. I wanted to start my own place again. And I liked the Phoenix market. I felt very comfortable here. And so I started looking for my opportunity, and that was finding a location and whatnot. And one of my stores that I had in Southern California that was the most profitable was a Highline store. So I wanted to focus on the Highline store because it had so much more to offer me because I love Highline vehicles. So, yeah.
And where we stand has 3 levels.
Yes.
And you also have a second location a block down the street.
Right.
So you bought this building first. You were in an old facility in Mesa.
Yes.
And then you decided you were looking for a building the whole time.
Right.
And you found this place.
Right.
And it's a former Land Rover Jaguar dealership facility, correct? And then you had a place across the street you rented, but that is now a condo.
Right.
But you found this other building down the street.
Right.
And you have all of your Benzes and Beamers here, but you have other Highlines down the street. You've always differentiated between the two. Yes. One thing about you that I know so true too is you're so much about process. And you look at processes. You're always looking at processes. You look at the customer first. It's always been customer first. But you put some really good processes in place. But unlike some stores where they put processes in place that don't stick with them.
Right.
You've been at this location how long in this?
This location we started in 2011.
2011.
So about 14.
And you've had certified Benz and Beamer for how long?
About 18 years.
18 years. Fantastic. But always the same process, always the same philosophy. And it started with how you price your cars. It started with the strategy, and there was no wavering. There wasn't, we're going to do this and try it for a while. There was, this is what we do.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about your pricing strategy and how that's worked over the years, because you're very unique in that.
Yeah, so we adopted the one price model from the very beginning. We wanted to take the friction out of the business, and I don't think you have to be an expert negotiator to get a good deal on a car. And we put a good price that we believe the customer can easily agree to right up front. And that's our philosophy. And we don't waver off that price. There's no negotiations. And we knew that we could, because of the uniqueness of the Highline vehicles, you can get into other markets. And I wanted the customers to understand you don't have to come here to get the best price. So we just offer it up right at the beginning, and we'll show the customers what of our competitors are asking for the same vehicle and what we're asking for the vehicle, and they can make a good, knowledgeable decision. And that's how we do it.
So you really were way ahead of the curve on that, weren't you? I mean, if you look at some of the most profitable and biggest used car big names nowadays, Carvana, CarMax.
Yes.
What you set the stage is a family-owned business right away using a lot of the same philosophies.
Right.
That people didn't come in wondering what they were going to get for their car. They might have known it online. You're fine with giving them all the information up front, right?
Right.
Which I had some experiences working with manufacturers. I won't name the name. But after COVID, they had a program put in place where a client could pretty much do all of it at home, right? Which you have that opportunity.
Correct.
And it's seamless. And the dealers that were part of that franchise hated it. It worked during COVID because they knew people weren't going to come in, so they wanted to give them that option.
Sure.
But as soon as COVID was over, they wanted them to come on in.
Right.
And why? Because we know why. They want an opportunity to control the sale.
Correct.
But Jack, I don't think that's ever been part of you. You realized if we have open communication and and there's no negotiation, and when we have adult conversations and they can get all the information they want before they even get here.
Right.
You mentioned no friction.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Why wouldn't they want to do business with you?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And there's a couple, some people would rather transact at their house, and that's fine. Some people would rather come to the dealership. So we're got to make sure we're available any way the customer wants to do it. And Currently we do about 25 to 30% of our business out of state where the customer doesn't come to the dealership and they transact and we ship the car to them.
Yep.
And, that's great. We're finally getting to that point where it's 100% transparent and we work hard to sell a car over the phone, basically over the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack, you said you're passionate. I know firsthand your passion, and you still have it, right? That fire still burns.
It does.
It does.
It does.
And what's so fascinating about it is you are, again, we went back. Well, I want to go back to process. Can we talk about process a little bit? Because I think that's a secret sauce with Jack Schneider.
Right.
So tell me about some of the processes that you put into place in your businesses. We talked about, you call it one price, you call it, what's your price?
Well, it's real-time market pricing. And it's basically, we examine other vehicles that are similar on the marketplace, and we've got to be competitive with them. So, if a dealer down the street has a car for $30,000, we've got to be at least $30,000 unless we have some features on the vehicle he doesn't have. So we're going to be competitive with that. And, CarMax actually started out as a one price. And before that, AutoNation was one price when they had their used car stores. Yes. And then they recently went back to that one price. They gave it up for many years, and they recently went back to it. So it's about transparency. Again, you give them a good price up front. There's no reason to spend an hour going back and forth to get to the best price. We just give it to them up the front. But that's part of our process, is explaining how we price our car. So once we explain it and it's understood, then the customer can relax and say, okay, so that's the price. Now let's pick the right car, based on knowing that you did the research and you can justify how you're priced. So,
and that's what I'd like you to walk us through that. So by the way, you look great. And I think you look great because you never go home at night and think, man, I could have had that car deal if I dropped that price another $200. Right. You've stayed so true to your processes.
Right.
And how you've started being true to that process is anybody who comes in can speak your language as good as you can. Every day, speaking the same language. Very consistent, very deliberate, very customer focused.
Right.
Talk to us about, if you're explaining to me how your pricing works, real-time market pricing. Explain to me as a customer how you want it said. So in other words, your real-time pricing, and I'm a customer, and you're telling me how you price your cars.
Yeah. Okay. So Bart, we offer real-time market pricing. What we do is we study the market and we set a price that we believe you could easily agree to. And I'll show you the details on that. And so that way you have to understand, you don't have to come here to the dealership to get our best price. We're just going to give it to you up front. We're going to show you what our competitors are asking for the same vehicle. And then you can decide who you want to choose to do business with. And that's basically it.
Yeah. You make it sound so simple. There's somebody sitting out there in listening land who's saying, well, how come I can't make it that simple? Well, I think it has to do with commitment, right? You make a commitment right away.
Right.
And yet one thing that I know you've always done, and there's a couple pieces to this that as a dealer, one would understand. Number one, you've got to be able to get the inventory, right? You've got to be able to get it right. And number two, you're always looking around at what the market is and you're adjusting. And your salespeople see how many times a week, maybe more than one time a week, adjustments on certain cars because the market adjusted.
Yes.
So when you say real-time market pricing, there's a lot of work in that.
Yes.
You've been massively committed to studying your market and making sure that they're priced accordingly.
Yeah.
So
basically every week a car gets analyzed and we're trying to be not always the lowest price, but one of the lowest priced ones. So as a car or two pops up that's priced less, we're going to adjust our prices down to be competitive with that. But we also look at, Carfax history and where the car come from. We specialize in West Coast cars because I think they're cleaner car, rust free. And that's where we get the bulk of our vehicles. We also look for high option cars and with clean Carfaxes with a good service history. Those things are paramount. We want to put the best car out there. So to be realistic, you don't have to be the lowest price one. If you have one that's competitive, but because your car has a good born place, if it's on the West Coast versus a back East car, if your car has good options and good color combinations. Color means a lot. Like right here in Arizona, a convertible black on black is not the ideal color combination, whereas California, it might be because you got cooler weather. People know that the seats can run a little hotter when they're the darker colors and whatnot. So we're looking for a good color combination. We're looking for high options, and we're looking for a very clean car that's been serviced, that was in a warm climate origination. Yeah.
Jack, I don't want to go too deep with this because there's some questions I want to ask you regarding leadership and process in a minute, but I am very curious. Do you have data for all this? Do you look at data constantly?
We do.
On how the market's moving and what a Range Rover black on black is doing in the marketplace here as opposed to Florida? I mean, you're always looking at that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Very data driven. Would you say that?
Yes.
Would be a good summation of how you run your business? Fascinating. And commitment.
That's right.
You could have given up. I remember there was and I remember you were talking to a dealer, I'm not going to say what franchise, and they have also done this kind of philosophy with their franchise, but there was a big group that came into town that had talked to that dealer about doing real-time market pricing, what they called one price, and it lasted about 6 weeks, and they bailed on it. You remember?
I don't remember that one.
I could tell, I don't want to say it out loud, but it was a big group.
Right.
They came into this market and bailed on it real quick. Okay. And I can imagine, because of the fact they weren't all in, we've all seen that happen our whole career, right?
Right.
So that was the Scion philosophy, frankly.
Yeah.
They came in, and I worked for Scion, obviously, but I was part of 10 people in the store in a room like this, actually, and we were just trying to figure out what's the sales process that would be customer first, that a customer would like. And at that point, many people don't maybe know this, but Scion was run by a gentleman named Jim Farley, who is now, of course, the CEO of Ford Motor Company.
Okay. And
he wanted a philosophy where the customers, they were looking for the younger customer. They didn't want to negotiate with his product. So we came up with a process. They called it market price. And we came up with a process where the car was priced up front. And they were all into it, but who wasn't? The dealers. Right. And they always found a way to circumvent the process.
Right.
But the factory wanted this because they knew customers would be happier.
Right.
They knew that there was that being caught up in negotiation can create conflict.
Right.
And so it's just really interesting. And again, one more thought on this. When I worked for the manufacturer, they had that used a one price process from home or a buy at home type process. The manufacturer, frankly, loved it because they wanted customers that were sitting on their couch drinking a glass of wine to be able to buy a car at midnight. But again, as we said earlier, the dealers didn't like it because they didn't have that control.
Right.
And it's a shame because, as you said, some people want to buy them from home. Some people want to come in. Some people want to talk about their trade first.
Right.
Some people never looked up their trade. And I love the philosophy of allowing them to buy a car from their place where they want to buy it from.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Everyone's different. Kind of like a lead. Somebody might send a lead in and asking them, would you prefer e-lead, or do you prefer email, or do you prefer a phone, or would you like to come in? What works best for you?
Right.
And we have a strategy and a process in place, but it starts with the customer feeling good with the process.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
We always ask the customer, do they prefer to talk on the phone, text, or email?
Yeah.
And what's their preference? And we'll stick with their preference.
Yeah.
If they say they like to text, we just text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many years in this business, we've tried to manipulate them.
Right.
Right. Instead of letting them do it their way.
Right.
And I think a lot of that manipulating the client is based on the fact we're not confident enough with our processes. And I don't mean you, but I mean as an industry to stick with our processes. If it's good and it's solid, it's authentic, then the customer is probably going to say, I trust you.
Right.
And if they trust you, they have certainty. If they have certainty, they're going to buy. Right. Let's talk leadership. But before we do that, because I've got to let the audience know about your processes. I'm excited to talk about leadership, but I want to go back to processes. I know that you're big on phone ups. I know you've done very well with phone ups at the store, and you had some incredible closing ratios on phone ups. I know the fact that you're really big on the CRM, make sure the people are in the CRM and they're nurturing their client base. Tell us about some of the processes besides the real-time market pricing that you've put in place that have really determined the success of how this machine works.
Well, I believe that the customer has to like you to want to do business with you. If they don't like you, they're not going to buy from you. They got to like the dealership as well. And they got to like the customer. I mean, product specialists. So that's what you got to do is build a relationship, but you only have a certain amount of time to impress the customer and build that relationship. And the best way to do that is through honesty and, just be truthful with the customer. And they'll see that you're a genuine person. They'll want to buy a car from you, and they'll tell you how to sell them a car. And that's kind of our philosophy. It involves a lot of training and getting everybody on the same page because nobody is exactly the same, but you want to give them the basics of how you want to treat a customer and that type of thing.
Well, I'm going to say that I've seen you train on certain word tracks and philosophies that are unique to certified Benz and Beamer.
Right.
And we won't share all those philosophies right here on this podcast because you have some trade secrets. But I have seen you train on it over and over and over and over and over and over again. Right. So the fellows and the ladies can do it without even thinking. It's so subconscious, right? One thing that you've really done, I think that it's been so good too, is on a management level. And I talk a lot about this in our boot camps. Of course, we do those boot camps on developing the leader. And on a management level, you have been very clear that you want your managers to be leaders and also to do one-on-ones with your people. That's been a big thing for you. To the point where you have had spreadsheets with the manager listed and the person that they're going to do a one-on-one with that particular day, correct? So tell us a little bit about that philosophy, and because I know it's worked for you, I know you're so consistent with it. Again, you're consistent with your processes. Tell us a little bit about your thinking with one-on-ones and why you think it's so important for the manager to sit down and do one-on-ones with your people.
Well, I think the manager should be your top salesperson. I mean, he's a guy who's done it all and he knows the car business. He knows that business. And talking with the sales professional about a particular customer is very important. And what is the objection that the customer's having that is keeping him from wanting to buy the car? And if you can overcome that objection, you can make the car deal. And so that's important. And a lot of times the customer may inquire on one car, but that's not the right car for them. And that's holding them back. So we got to figure out what is the right car. Maybe it's a payment that the customer's trying to get to. Maybe it is, I've got a growing family. I need a place for 3 kids to sit in the car, that type of thing. So you got to really figure out what their hot button is and try to match a vehicle to their hot button, even though that perfect car may not be the one they inquired on.
So what I'm hearing is that those managers sitting down with them, dissecting, asking some questions, listening to what the salesman's telling them between the lines, if there's any fear there, do they ask the right questions? Is that we have a coaching philosophy, and we have a coaching philosophy that we coach managers with so they can be coaches. And I hate the word coach. I like the word what's called activator, Jack. And an activator asks great questions. It gets the subject to activate their thinking. And what I'm hearing you, and I know this because I've been around you and I've seen it, your people are, whatever you call it, one-on-one, coaching, whatever, they're activating the thinking of the people they're talking to. And they're doing it consistently. So they sit down with them, They ask some questions, they're listening, and they're building trust with the salesperson that this person knows what they're talking about. And obviously there's that manager salesperson bond anyhow, hopefully. But it's bigger at your store because your managers are spending time with their salespeople in one-on-one environments.
Right.
So from that, asking great questions, listening really well, building that trust, now the manager can say, do this.
Right.
But what I see, Jack, is so many times a manager will say, do this, but they haven't built that trust with the sales.
Right.
And that's why I love those one-on-ones. I've seen in my business, one-on-ones have changed lives.
Yeah.
I've seen marriages saved because of it. I've seen cars sold, more cars sold. I've seen leaders become great leaders because one-on-one. Right. But why don't we do it? I mean, not you, but why don't others do it?
I do not know.
I know.
I do not understand. You got to be able to roll up your sleeves and get involved. And I personally do that. I mean, we have 18, 19 salespeople, and I make sure I do 2 or 3 myself a week to show my management that there's deals to be made if you get involved and roll up your sleeves and try to help out.
Yeah.
But the most important thing to start is know your inventory. You got to know what you can suggest to that customer if that's not the perfect vehicle. Because 30-40% of the time, you just figure out it's not the right car for that customer. And you normally, if you have a good inventory, you have other choices that might be a better fit. Yeah.
And you do have folks that know their inventory. You've got a couple of superstars here that are 30-plus car people.
Right.
And if there's any, they're pros. I mean, they could be your GSMs if they want to, but they're doing so well in what they do that they would never want to do that.
Right.
And or they're so good is they know everything. When a car hits the lot at midnight, they do it.
Yeah.
when your buyer buys a car, they know it. And that's really the secret sauce, isn't it? I doing a lot of phone trading over the years. I know that I would say to a salesperson, before you even take a phone up, you better know your inventory.
Yeah.
Because if you take a phone up without knowing your inventory, you're just being a clerk.
Right.
And you're probably not going to get them on the right car or get them excited enough to come in. Because if that car that they call on isn't here, what are your options in your brain? What's working in your brain? Are you just going to say, come on in anyhow?
Right.
Or do you really have questions you can ask them? And then you say, oh, we've got that one that came in last night.
Right.
So, yeah, that seems to be the secret sauce.
Yes.
And you guys are, and I don't know if you're still there, but at one point you're about 30% closed on incoming phone calls. Are you higher than that? Or
We're in the
mid-40s.
Yeah.
What do you consider that? What's besides what we already talked about? What's the secret to that? That is national average is 5%, Jack.
Is it?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Why do you think you guys are so good?
I think processes, building a relationship with the customer and building trust.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key.
Yeah.
And knowing the inventory is also a very special part.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to suggest other vehicles. And in a fast moving world of used cars, cars are selling fast. And we'll have a lead or we'll have a customer that was interested, but somebody would buy it. You got to be able to suggest other vehicles because you have a customer that's in the buying mode and you just got to match them up with the right car. And if they like you and they like the dealership, they're going to do it.
You know what? If we think about our phone training we've done here and the phone training that's done or not done other places, so many times when somebody picks up a phone at another store, they want to make sure they get the appointment today.
Right.
And what I'm hearing you say is just because we don't get it today doesn't mean we don't have a strategy to make sure we get them in tomorrow or have another option.
Right.
And because we treat them with respect and we listen well, we ask good questions here, and because the manager's involved pretty much right away if a call doesn't go through and there's teamwork going on. It's amazing how many people that we don't set appointments to, we get back in anyhow when we have an adult conversation with them and tell them about something else that we've got, right? It's a very transparent process. One of the processes that we put in place here that I remember really jumping our numbers up, as soon as we put did the phone call, we would write or text to the manager, yes, I made an appointment, or no, I did not.
Right.
So in real time, you talk about real-time marketing, real-time pricing. In real time, we knew when the salesman did or did not make an appointment.
Right.
So if I'm the manager, I'm thinking, okay, I need to call this person back and say, folks, thanks for checking in. How can we be of service? Or if they said yes, folks, thanks for checking in. Looks like you're coming in at 4. Look forward to meeting you.
Yes,
So
exactly.
either one of those calls end up being either saving a deal,
Right.
or really making the customer, client, friend
Right.
feel like, these guys are really good.
Right. Right.
And you're a stickler with confirming.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a big deal, right?
They're more likely to keep the appointment if it's confirmed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not just clicking the box in the CRM.
Right.
Really having a conversation.
Right.
And what I found, and you know this, we've talked about this so many times, the sooner we can do that, we can do it within 15 minutes and confirm and really make it an edifying call. Hey, I know you talked to Jamie, great guy. He'll take great care of you. So glad you're coming in. My name's Bart. I'll be glad to take care of you when you come in too. I'll be here to answer any questions. When you get here, we'll have that car pulled off the roof and it'll be ready for you when you get here. Look forward to seeing you at 4:15, folks. Of course they're going to come in.
Right.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, can we talk leadership?
We can.
It's my favorite topic.
Sure.
What's your philosophy on, in terms of your managers? What do you want them to accomplish as leaders? And I know that's not necessarily, I'm throwing you a little bit of a curve there, but if there's one thing that you would say that you mentioned your managers are your best salespeople, any department you have, whether it's a very successful service department or your parts department or sales, what would you like your managers to be best at in leading other people?
Well, I think they have to build a relationship with the salesperson. That's important. The salesperson has to trust the manager. Mm-hmm. And if they trust the manager, they're willing to go the extra mile for that manager and work as a team. I believe that they're teammates. And, you know, one of them's a manager, one of them's sales, but they're teammates. They got to work together to make a car deal. And so they got to trust them. So you got to be able to make that phone call for the salesperson to, you know, to overcome objections. You got to be there to help them win the sale. Mm-hmm. And so they got to have a great relationship. And if they have a relationship, they're more, likely to listen and follow the process. And that's key.
First of all, who was the person in your life that had the most influence on you? What could be in or out of the business,
right?
But had the most influence on you of who you are as a man today?
I would say my dad. Yeah, my dad was spectacular. He was an engineer. He got to choose his work hours, so he would go to work at 6 a.m. so he could come home at 4 and take us to football, baseball, basketball, whatever sport you were playing, he would go there and he would be involved. He'd be involved with the team. Where can he help? He was a football announcer for us when I was playing football as a young man. And so he was there. And Boy Scouts, he took us on the weekend campouts and he'd be out there camping with us. So he was very involved with his kids. And that was he's my mentor.
Yeah, right on. And you and I don't think we've had that conversation. So thank you for allowing me to ask that. I saw a little bit of, Jack, you're a high quality leader, but I saw a lot of emotion right there. Yeah, that's awesome.
We lost him at 67 years old, and I miss him, and he means a lot. So.
Yeah, my mom was that for me.
Yeah,
sure. So what I know about you is that is who you are. How many kids do you have, Jack?
3.
And then how many grandkids now?
6.
And how many of your family members are part of your organization here?
Well, I have son-in-laws, nieces, nephews, and kids. So they're all involved.
And this is a family business.
Right.
And you do a lot of stuff with your family. I know your grandkids hang out with you a lot.
Yes.
I love that part of you, of taking what your dad did. What was your dad's name?
Jack.
You're taking Jack's lead.
Right.
You absolutely put that into place. It shows. That's awesome. Jack, in your 20 years, knowing that there's, we've talked about this in the past, the 5 levels of leadership: position, permission, production, people development. There's also pinnacle, which is the elite level. What have you learned about leadership in the last 20 years that you would say, here's some advice I want to give this young person coming into the business as a leader? What's one thing you've learned for them to be the most successful they can be? What's one thing, what bit of advice that you would give a young leader?
Well, I think that they have to be ready to develop their team. And so that involves training and whatnot, but the team needs to trust you. So you've got to build trust with that teammate and work on developing their skills and let them know that you care. And if you genuinely care, and they're going to see that, and they're going to want to learn and retain the stuff that you're training. So, be positive and be willing to train and develop. Yeah.
And Jack, in Maxwell's hierarchy of leadership, there's the pinnacle leader. And the pinnacle leader is someone who develops people, who develop people. And you have so many examples of people that have left you and gone open other stores, or left you and run other stores, or because of your tutelage and who you are, become better parents because they were around you and how important family was to you. So I congratulate you for that. That's good stuff. You and I get this, and you've done this so well. I have a T-shirt that says, "Who's training your managers?" And it's one thing, as a friend of mine in Georgia said, when I asked him, what's the one thing that you would tell a young manager to be a good leader, kind of what we asked here, he said, train. And that's what you've taught your people to do.
Right.
And then the next question is, who's training the managers?
Right.
Right. Because there's so many times when we put people in leadership roles, they never got as much training as their salespeople.
Right.
But they're probably, especially in your hierarchy of things, they're more important to give them training because they're going to be so good at it, they're going to train my salespeople.
Exactly.
Right? So Congratulations for that. But your success shines, and there's a reason for it. I think Tony Robbins said it best, success leaves clues, and you definitely have left clues. So I congratulate you for your past success, your current success, and your future success, and who you are. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate it.